Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Matthew Kudo and I'm the Communications Coordinator at TechSoup Canada. I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on the 10 design and tech trends for 2016. Before we get started though, I'd like to quickly introduce you to TechSoup Canada. Our mission here at TechSoup Canada is to help other nonprofits use technology effectively, and we accomplish this in two ways. The first is to make technology products more affordable through our technology donations program. So we partner with corporations such as Microsoft, Adobe, and Symantec, and we offer their products as either an outright donation or at a significant discount for charities, nonprofits, and libraries across Canada. For example, if you want a copy of Microsoft Office Professional, you can expect to pay around $500 online or in-store. However, if you're a TechSoup Canada member and you qualify for a Microsoft donations program, you can get Office Pro for $57. So as you can imagine, the cost savings can become quite significant, especially if your nonprofit's purchasing software for your entire staff team. And creating a TechSoup Canada account is free, so if you'd like to get more information, please visit our website at techsoupcanada.ca/getting_started. The second way we try to help nonprofits use technology effectively is by creating and curating nonprofit tech resources. We write blogs, we curate content on social media, and we host events and webinars like this one to help nonprofits learn more about the technologies that can help them in their day-to-day work. So if there's ever a topic you'd like to learn more about, please do not hesitate to let us know. We're always delighted to get feedback from our members about what topics are important to them and what they want to know more about. So a few logistics. So for today's webinar, you can use your GoToWebinar panel on your right-hand side to enter your questions, chat with us, or change your audio settings. Just a reminder that you all are on mute, so if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to chat with us in the question box, and we'll do our best to help. And also note that this webinar is being recorded, so we will upload the video on our website tomorrow, and it will have the recording will have closed captioning. So today's speakers are myself, Matthew Kudo, and our communications lead here at TechSoup Canada, Joyce. So together we are the marketing communications team, and we're responsible for running social media here at TechSoup, doing email marketing campaigns, speaking at live events such as conferences, doing webinars like this one, just the day-to-day stuff that gets the word out about our programs. So we're going to start with Joyce speaking, and she's going to address the 5 tech trends we predict will play a significant role in the nonprofit sector this year. And then I will speak to the 5 design trends. We're then going to end with a Q&A period. So again, please feel free to chat to us any questions that you have throughout the presentation, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. And without further ado, I'm going to pass the floor over to Joyce.
All right, thanks. So thank you again, Matthew, for doing the intro bit for our webinar. Let's just get the ball started with just a survey because we want to get our brains flowing about tech trends. So I'm going to ask the audience, which are you, how often do you keep yourself up to date on tech trends? So here I'm just going to pull up the slide, the survey, and please feel free to pick one of the ones that matches your needs the most, whether it's you keep up to date quite frequently or once or twice a year on an as-needed basis, which don't be shy. We know that technology, unless it's a pillar, a part of your mission at your nonprofit, it is really hard to keep up to date with all the technology trends that are happening. So be as honest. This is whether you are trying to keep up to date on an individual basis or for your nonprofit. We just kind of want to get a sense of how people are keeping themselves up to date on tech trends. So here we have about 72% of attendees voting. It's quickly going up. Let's just give it a couple more seconds to hit about 80%, and then I will show the results of the survey. And we are so close. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to close the survey and show the results. Just give me a moment. Okay, so share. All right, so as you can see, this is our audience for today. We have quite a few people are really on top of their tech trends quite frequently, daily or monthly. That's amazing. The next step up is on an as-needed basis. So this is typically, let's say at your nonprofit, you find that your computers are, or maybe your website is a little bit out of date. So then that's when you keep yourself refreshed on the trends that you need to know. We have a lot of great, honest people saying once or twice a year or very rarely. So because of the kind of vast majority of nonprofits being on a very frequent basis or kind of as needed, as you can imagine, like trying to educate everyone in this spectrum will be quite hard. So I'm going to start off by giving you a bit of some context to what today's presentation will be about. And let me just go back to the presentation. So this presentation is not necessarily about the greatest and latest cutting edge tech trends. So this is for you folks that are like on the cutting edge of the tech curve. Here are some pictures of some of the latest tech trends to come out of 2015. We see wearable technology. There's this really amazing safety helmet that actually combines augmented reality into the safety goggles. So then workers on the front line, instead of referring to an instruction manual, they can actually work hands-free. So in that little picture at the bottom, you can see someone is trying to adjust that pipe, but they don't need to refer to a safety manual because it's projected right in front of them. So that is sort of the latest trends in wearable technology. Now that middle picture is very interesting. That is actually a rhino horn, and that is actually 3D printed. So what we see is that in 3D printing, it has become a more mature market from, let's say, 2 years ago. There are more materials that people are experimenting with. There's also more accessibility. And in this picture, there's a project where someone is actually trying to print rhino horns to kind of flood the black market, to lower the demand of actual real rhino horns. Whether that is going to be effective or not is still yet to say. The verdict is out on that. But it does speak to the technology where we're at. We're able to print materials outside of just plastics or metal. We can print biological materials as well. And then that last picture is kind of the latest trend in virtual reality. It's called the Omni Virtual Reality, I think, stand, where when you have the virtual reality goggles on your head, you can see you're fully immersed, but your body is still in a physical room. So to really help put you in that immersive state, they created this treadmill where you can run, you can hop, you can jump, and be fully immersed, not just in your visuals, but your body as well. But as you can probably imagine, these trends, although they are widely available or at least being experimented with, might not actually help your nonprofit. Or if it does, if it can help your nonprofit, it's very expensive to invest in these trends. So for today's presentation, we're focusing on the trends that are, still relevant, still new, but more achievable, something that we believe will actually impact your nonprofit in 2016. So if you have questions about, the latest wearable technology, how can your nonprofit use augmented reality or virtual reality, this is unfortunately not the presentation where we'll cover that. We believe there's a lot of big tech giants out there that cover that subject pretty much so thoroughly that we don't feel the need to repeat that. What we are going to cover are the trends that we think you can implement this year. So to kick us off, we predict that technology for 2016 is going to focus on everything integrating. It will be the year of interconnectivity. The first trend towards this is having data visualization be automated. So I'm going to take a step back and say, what is data visualization and what does it mean to have that automated? There's this concept of dashboards, and I'm sure a lot of nonprofits in the session right now probably has at least one or two dashboards kind of at their fingertips. They're basically places where it automatically will update and visualize your data in meaningful ways. And an example, a very basic example of this would be Google Analytics. So here is a screenshot of our Google Analytics internally. So this is TechSoup Canada, where it takes the data of people going on our website, it automatically updates all of these graphs so then we don't have to manually export, import, make it into bar graphs and line graphs. It will do all of this for us. And what we predict is while nonprofits are aware of dashboards, more and more nonprofits are going to find a way to invest in automating those dashboards and have them available for each of their function area, not just for finance, not just for marketing, but like program delivery. How many youth have you reached? How many workshops did you actually accomplish last year? The reason why we believe this trend is important is first, dashboards will help you make smarter, more timely decisions. When you're running your program, your staff is concentrated on delivering quality service. They don't necessarily have the time to sit back, reflect on what the data is. But when you go back to your funders, that is what they're concentrated on. Again, how many people have you reached? Did they learn? Did you follow up with them? More and more grantors and funders are requiring these things in order for them to trust you with the donations that they are giving you. This will also help you understand the trends of today. If you design a program, you did market research, you did some focus groups, and it seems like it's going to work, but as you're executing it, let's say at a gala or maybe, again, an educational workshop, halfway through you see that the attendance and the reception is not quite what you predicted. Having automated dashboards that are, again, up to date, most likely real time, will help you see those trends and be able to adjust your program as is happening. Another aspect that we have to be very honest with ourselves is we create a lot of data, more than we can actually comprehend. So dashboards, automated dashboards, are a great way for us to find the meaningful parts of our data. Not every data metric is useful for your program, nor are they going to give you insights. But having dashboards where you sort of predetermine what are the valuable metrics for you to track, that is what will help you understand the things that are happening. And lastly, automation, it will save you time and it reduces human error. There are nonprofits who have dashboards, and we are in the same boat where we have a dashboard where we would take the data, manually export it, and then import it into the dashboard for it to give us all the fancy graphs that we need. But the more steps it takes for a human hands or eyes to kind of input that data into something else, that actually introduces a percentage of error. Let's say when I download something and before I upload it, I accidentally delete a column. Because I don't do that on purpose, I might not understand that that has happened before I input it in. So then when my board members, when my stakeholders see the graph, it's actually not accurate. So when you do automate it, you're actually asking your two systems to talk directly to each other, and you're not being sort of that middle person. So again, automation saves you time and it reduces human error. So all of this talk is great. So how do you get started? So we do believe that automation requires someone internally, whether you have like a developer or maybe an IT consultant that you pay to do that. But you do need the tools for them to create the automation script. So we do recommend that you invest in data visualization tools that can be automated. So one of the things that we recommend is Zoho. This is actually what we use internally, but then we also recently received donations of Tableau through TechSoup Canada, and this is actually a really amazing deal. The subscription on a retail price is about $2,000, but you can get it for $88 through TechSoup Canada. So again, if you have a free membership and you qualify for this program, pick it up. It's actually a really amazing data visualization tool, and it does integrate well with Excel and other databases. So the next trend that we believe that ties into this concept of interconnectivity is this concept of the digital mesh or device mesh, and trying to create an ambient user experience, which is what that UX stands for. What does this mean? Well, the trend is devices are becoming more and more integrated with one another. And trying to, when I say devices, it could also be applications, it can be programs or platforms. And because they're becoming more and more integrated, users are looking for their experience to carry across these boundaries. This means when they go to your site on their desktop or on their mobile device, tablet or phone, they're trying to expect the same thing. So why is this trend important? One, users' attention span are getting shorter year over year. The latest results in 2015 is that users online, now their attention spans are about 8 seconds, which is actually shorter than a goldfish, because a goldfish attention span is about 8.5. This doesn't mean that they're less intelligent or less committed. It just means that there's a lot more content for them to filter through, so they have less time to consume. So going back to the fact that we produce a lot of data, but we have less time to consume them, this goes hand in hand. So if you want to capture their attention, have them remain on your website, you want a continuous user experience. This, when you do have your devices kind of integrating and talking to one another, it does also allow you to have an easier workflow and have the ability to automate your processes. So again, this trend is about connecting all of your backend platforms to one another, connecting your fundraising platforms to your CRM to your email marketing to your microsite. So then users can move between the systems on the backend, but for them, it's one experience. So there isn't like a tool or an application that will magically make this happen for you. So here are 3 tips. If you haven't already done so, invest in responsive design. This way, at least visually, your user experience will be consistent. The second thing is automate low maintenance decisions. This means if there's any decisions that are kind of that will help the user kind of move along with participating in your program, automate it for them. One of the low-hanging fruits is if you have a returning donor, they donate every month. When they go on the donation form, it will be great if your system can recognize who they are and be able to ask them, do you want to populate the last address that you put in? So then all they need to do is to really just fill out the donation amount. And again, if that's not possible, the last thing is integrate your systems as much as possible. It's not ideal for you to just pick systems just so they can integrate, but that is still very important. It's better that you have all these systems that integrate and talk to one another than having a great system that's siloed and all the other programs are very separate. Now, the next trend is embracing hybrid cloud models. What is a hybrid cloud? First, it means storing sensitive information on a private internal server and then non-sensitive information on a public cloud. Sensitive information could be credit card numbers, it could be your own staff's like SIN numbers, and then non-sensitive information could be like your latest marketing collateral. I'm not saying that that isn't confidential, but it's not pertaining to personal information. So why is this trend relevant? First, more and more services and products are moving to the cloud, whether we like it or not. You can see this at like a really big example would be Adobe. A lot of their services used to be desktop application only, but with the release of Creative Cloud, they are committed to only releasing new versions through the cloud platform. This means you can have your desktop application, but if you want their newest version, you can only get it through their online platform. You can kind of see this with QuickBooks as well. We have QuickBooks Desktop, but there's also QuickBooks Online. Having this trend doesn't mean that you have to be on board with it, but it's just recognizing that some of the services that you depend on, that is the movement that they're going towards. The hybrid cloud will help you be able to keep your sensitive data internally on Canadian soil while being able to participate on these cloud services online. And again, having this hybrid cloud model will mean that you don't have to sacrifice the remote access, the really encrypted and secure backup systems, just so you can keep everything internally on a server in your office. So the next steps is how can you prepare for this? There are cloud platforms that you can actually download and install on your own servers, but have the ability to, like, if your staff have access to that server, it will function almost like your own private cloud. So this is a tool that we do recommend because it's open source, which means it's free. Own Cloud is a cloud server that you host. So then you can ensure that your data is on Canadian soil, especially if you have grants from British Columbia or Nova Scotia, which does say that you need to have your data stored internally. You can then still participate in cloud services without compromising your security. Your privacy. So more on this, we have a web blog post that describes this process more in detail. So if you're interested in that, you can copy that link and read more about that. The next trend is adaptive security. So this is actually more of a philosophy. And to really understand this is to describe what is the traditional form of security as is right now. Right now we have what we call a perimeter defense, which is firewalls, and the rule-based security, which are antivirus softwares or any kind of security software that you install on computers. These kind of traditional types of security is still relevant, but they're not enough, or they're not sufficient on their own, because they really function as incident response. As soon as something hits one of those rules or breaks one of those rules, then the system triggers saying, hey, something is being compromised, and then you respond to it. The trend now is that you need to actually do continuous monitoring in order to detect and respond to threats that might not even be breaking your system, quote unquote. What does this mean? First, there is, with the adoption of cloud services, there are more and more services that are being integrated with your very secure systems. So let's say your database is very secure, your website is secure, but let's say you did an integration to Salesforce, which is an online CRM. Now, Salesforce is very secure, but in the event that you, let's say, didn't really do your research and you find that that integration is actually a little bit open, that does actually, because it integrates with all of your systems, it will actually open all of your systems to being compromised. The next trend is that there is this emerging hacker industry where people who don't have a background in IT and don't even need to look at your code can actually compromise your information. And I'll describe this in a little bit more detail later. The next one is we do have high consequences, especially in Canada. We do take our privacy and our security online very strict. So consequences could be maybe you're not CASL compliant, which could be fines could go up to about 10 million per organization, regardless of whether you're for-profit or nonprofit. So having a continuous monitoring will just ensure that you prevent these incidents from happening, because more and more people are compromising company security, not just by breaking into code, but using this new term called social engineering. Social engineering is a way for people to compromise your data without actually breaking into your database. I don't have all the time to explain what this means, but there is a really great case study on our website called The Epic and Easy Hacking of Matt Honan. Matt Honan is a senior writer at this technology magazine called Wired. And again, this case was actually dated back to 2012. It's just goes to show that the social engineering industry is growing and people are getting a little bit more clever on how to get into the back end of systems without touching your code. The case starts off with someone who wanted Matt Honan's account, started with his website address, and then from there they acquired more and more information until they finally got access to his email account, his Apple account, and his Twitter account, and then deleted them. So I know this is sort of like the most escalated worst case scenario, but it does detail what social engineering is and how these hackers, quote unquote, didn't, like, even though they compromised his accounts, they didn't do that by hacking into the system. They actually went along with the rules of each of these accounts to get this information. So if you want to learn more about that, I highly recommend reading up on that blog post. It tells you step by step on how these hackers did it, so then you can internally look at your systems and identify the weak points. Last tech trend, another note about adaptive security is do have the most up-to-date perimeter and rule-based security. We do recommend Bitdefender. They have been performing very well by third-party antivirus labs, and you do get a discount through TechSoup Canada. And if you want to learn more about adaptive security, there's an article on Gartner about how you can kind of look at this from your organization's perspective. And lastly, the last trend of kind of like this interconnectivity is more and more people outside of tech is going to learn how to code. And here we're going to say marketers or people who manage digital properties. So for example, your marketing team, your communication, or even your fundraising team, they manage different parts of your website. This means that there will be times that they might need to understand how to read code. They don't need to learn how to code from scratch, but they need to learn enough so they can manipulate it. Just a word, we're not saying that everyone's going to become a developer or a programmer. We're just predicting that people will start to be more acquainted and familiar with markup languages. So markup languages are HTML and CSS, and basically they control and structure the presentation of content online. JavaScript is actually a programming language, but it only works in your browser. So actually a lot of marketers and communication staff are starting to learn JavaScript because it's the barrier to entry to learning that kind of programming language is quite low. So again, to just define what we mean, HTML defines the content on the page, and CSS defines how it looks. So these are the two languages that we believe more and more people are starting to learn, so it will become more common knowledge. Why is this important? First, marketers, communication staffs, and fundraisers, you will need it. More marketing systems, CMS, which are content marketing systems. When you're creating content online, more and more are you touching the formatting, how it's being perceived by the user, and the more you depend on your IT staff for it, the less capable you are at designing effective campaigns for it. So again, we do predict that having this common knowledge for your fundraising, for your communications, and for your marketing team will actually help you design more effective campaigns. So to keep your nonprofit, learning more about this trend, there are actually free tools out there like Code Academy, which is a free e-learning course. They teach you not only HTML and CSS, but any programming language you want. And again, they're all free. If you prefer in-person workshops, there's code.org and Ladies Learning Code, which despite what their name sounds like, anyone can attend. And again, they're very affordable, and they have really great instructors that can help you understand and read code. So these are the trends that we predict for technology in the technology industry. So here I'm going to do a quick survey on what you think about these trends. So here I'm just going to launch the survey on which of these tech trends that we just covered do you think will impact your nonprofit the most? And here it could be data visualization, which again are dashboards that are automated. It could be integrating all of your systems together so you can create a more consistent user experience. It could be embracing cloud hybrid models so you can save data on a private server and have data on public servers. It could be being more protective of your security and not just relying on firewalls and antivirus software to catch threats. And the last one is getting your staff outside of your tech team to learn how to code. So here I'm going to close the survey and show the results. So then you can kind of see how people in this webinar are going to address these trends. So this is actually very interesting. So without further ado, I'm actually going to pass the board to Matthew Couteau, who's going to lead us on the web design trends of 2016.
Thank you, Joyce. So the web design trends of 2016. So we're predicting here at TechSoup Canada that 2016 will be the year of user experience. And we've mentioned this a bit before with the tech trends, and I want to take a second to define user experience. So the dictionary definition is the overall experience of a person using a product such as a website or computer application, especially in terms of how easy or pleasing it is to use. So essentially what we're talking about user experience is that when a user comes to visit your site, how clear is it? How clear are they to navigate your site? What actions do they need to take to access the information they want? So the easier and more straightforward it is for them, the better their user experience will be. So the first design trend we're looking at is Flat 2.0. Now, the predecessor of Flat 2.0, which is flat design, is the standard right now. And flat design is based in minimalism. It's design that has no depth perception. It comes off as very two-dimensional and flat, hence its name. So it actually almost looks like a page that you would physically print out. And the benefits of this is it keeps content very simple. It makes it easy on the eyes, and users don't get overwhelmed because it's all very, very clean. So I'm going to take a moment to do a quick exercise. So I want you all to take even just 5 seconds to think in your head. So if you look at this screen here, which is an example of flat design, which of these elements do you think are clickable? Which of these are hyperlinks? So keep your answer in mind. So the answer for this is actually everything here in gray and light gray is clickable. The ones that are not are the words shop, about, Alaska, the stuff in bold. Those are simply menu headings. Now you might be thinking to yourself that's pretty obvious, but that's because you just through your general internet use, you've almost been conditioned to understand just basic tenets of flat design. But for many users out there, this isn't very obvious, and they would have gone to this website and they would have tried to click on shop, and nothing would have happened, and there would be a sense of confusion, a frustration, or not knowing what's going on. That's what we mean about those kind of things detract from user experience. And this kind of situation is exactly what Flat 2.0, the successor of flat design, is looking to address. So what is Flat 2.0? Well, we have flat on the left and Flat 2.0 on the right. And basically what Flat 2.0 is trying to do is use subtle elements of depth perception to kind of make certain elements on a page pop out. So in this Flat 2.0 design, we see light shadowing under our characters. We see a line on the top hat that creates a 3D effect, even a little glint on the wizard's monocle. These are very, very small details, but they make the images pop out from the page and create a depth perception. And the Flat 2.0, it's also referred to at times as material design, semi-flat design, or almost flat design. And the whole principle behind it is that it makes it very obvious to the user what elements on a web page are clickable and what are not clickable, what is just content. So in our example here, if you look on the example, the little plus sign, which is a green circle in the bottom right of the screen, actually has light shadowing. So it actually has those Flat 2.0 elements that make it pop from the page. And as well, if you scrolled, hypothetically, if you scrolled through this list of notes, that same little symbol, that plus symbol, would hover. It would be static. It wouldn't move. So it creates this effect that it's actually popping out of the page. It's in the foreground. So this is actually the basis of Flat 2.0. It's the idea that everything that's clickable, everything that's a hyperlink, in other words, is in the foreground. It's three-dimensional. It's hovering, and everything that's in the background is simply content. So creating this separation makes it very, very simple and straightforward for users. What is clickable and what's not, and it benefits their user experience and makes surfing the internet more enjoyable and straightforward and accessible experience. So you might be thinking, why do we need these kind of signifiers? Well, if you look back to the early 2000s, even as far back as the 90s, as a millennial, I'm going back to my childhood. When we accessed the net, hyperlinks were very, very clear. They were bold, underlined blue text that when you clicked and you accessed the hyperlink, it became purple. We also started to see three-dimensional beveled buttons that popped out of the page, similar to what we're talking about with Flat 2.0. So actually, when the early days of the internet, it was very clear to users what was clickable and what was not. But slowly, we started moving into flat design. And what really happened was that as HTML, CSS, these markup languages became more complex, designers had more room to be creative with their web design. And they actually, in a sense, got out of hand and prioritized the artistry of their design over user experience. So in many instances with flat design, you just simply don't know what's clickable. Anything could be a hyperlink, and often the only way to find out is to hover over it or to actually click it. And that's what Flat 2.0 looks to address, is to make everything straightforward and everything very clear. So besides creating a very positive and confident user experience, it's something that's also going to create increased conversion rates, because when a user feels comfortable on your website, that's going to reflect positively on your nonprofit organization. And the last thing I'll say to Flat 2.0 design is to keep in mind that this is an upcoming trend. It's something that's still being adopted. So it's not yet the standard. We're in that transition period between flat and Flat 2.0, but we're predicting that we're going to see 2.0 more and more in web design going forward, especially in the nonprofit sector. And we have some resources to understand the origins and the transition we're going through and what we really mean when we talk about Flat 2.0 or material design. So our next trend is creative scrolling. So in the past, websites were always sectioned off into different pages. You have your home section, your about page, maybe a page on case studies. This is still, I mean, we're all familiar with this. It's still used today. And when you visit a certain page, you scroll down to access content that's outside your screen display, but it's all segmented. And it's still the standard, but now we're starting to see more and more that designers are getting creative with scrolling features to create unique and entertaining user experiences. As you can see in this example, as you scroll down, different content options are popping out to kind of engage you and get it in your head. So the two we're going to look at that are most prevalent are infinite scrolling and long scrolling. So infinite scroll is content on a web page that loads as you scroll down. There's no pagination. It's all right there in front of you. This is an example we're using here within the World Wildlife Foundation Canada's blog. You keep going down until you find something catches your eye, a certain headline or a certain image, and then you follow the content out from there. Another common example of infinite scrolling that you're probably familiar with if you're a Facebook user is the news feed. You go through your news feed, you scroll down, and you keep going until there's a story that you're interested in. The second one we're looking at is long scrolling. So it's similar to infinite scrolling, whereas all the content that's available on a single website is all on one page. Yes, there are hyperlinks within that page that take you to smaller pages elsewhere, but for the most part, everything that you could possibly access through that website is on that single page. You scroll down to access the content, and you eventually hit the bottom, and then you have to scroll back up. So there is a limit, but it's all contained. And this is these kind of scrolling trends make it a lot easier for designers to organize and contain all the information in a very clear way. So that's very positive for user experience. And it creates a more engaging experience for the audience. The other one we're going to talk about, which is more of an animation trend than a scrolling trend, but we're talking about parallax scrolling. So what parallax scrolling, it's actually been around since the 80s when you think back to old side-scrolling games such as the Super Mario Brothers. And what it is when the foreground and the background scroll at different paces and different speeds to create a three-dimensional effect. So if you look at the Seattle example, when you scroll up, different animations fly through the page, different hyperlinks pop up at different points of your scrolling, and it creates a very engaging website experience. And you might be thinking to yourself, wow, cool, right? That's the initial reaction. It's the cool factor. It's that it's something new. It's an animation. It's engaging. And that's one of the big benefits, right? It draws you in. It's inherently interesting, and it can help you tell a story on your website. The other thing is the emphasis on scrolling to access content rather than only clicking makes it mobile friendly. And as we know, mobile use to access the internet is increasing by the day. And whenever you have an option to scroll, it's better for mobile. As I said before, it's easy to manage large amounts of data. But there are other drawbacks associated with different scrolling. So even though it's cool and it's engaging, you have to understand that also just because the animation is engaging the audience doesn't necessarily mean that the audience is engaging with your content. There's a big difference. So it may just be that your audience is scrolling through, enjoying the animation, going, wow, but they're not actually understanding the story or the message that you're trying to tell. So there are different situations where creative scrolling can be useful and other situations where it might actually detract from the user experience, might lead to lower conversions. And as well, it does create, in some respects, a loss of control. And this, again, in this Seattle example, you scroll up to access the animation, whereas everyone's used to scrolling down. So that kind of difference is going to create confusion in some users and detract from their user experience. So design trend number three, we're looking at rich in animations. So as Joyce addressed earlier, CSS is a markup language that determines the presentation of your website. And designers have been using this to create very creative animations that enhance storytelling. And CSS animations can virtually be anything you can think of. Designers got very, very original and creative with this. But there are two in particular that we're going to look at. One is the Cinemagraph, and the other is the video background. So cinemagraphs are are seamless loops that are created by combining a still image with a video. They're very similar, and they behave very similarly to a GIF file. So because it's a short loop, it means it's a small file, and because it's a small file, it means it's good for mobile. So that means the cinemagraphs are going to load quickly, and they're not going to eat up as much user data if they're accessing through their data plans. And it's another way to just complement your brand or your story and engage your audience with these moving images. Now the cons of cinemagraphs are they actually are quite time-consuming to make if you want to make your own or make one originally. But luckily there are free options for cinemagraphs, which I will touch on in just a moment. But first we're going to talk on video backgrounds. So it's very straightforward. A video background is video that plays in the background as a loop. It's different from a cinemagraph because whereas cinemagraph is a very short loop, a video background can be up to multiple minutes. It can be an extended piece of footage that continues until it runs out and then it starts again. So video backgrounds can be more engaging because of the length and the more option of footage you can show, but they're not as mobile friendly because they're larger files. So in the example we're looking at here with Risen Church, they actually use a still image on their mobile site of this Los Angeles road to make it a smaller file, but when you use it on their desktop version, then it is a video background. So these animations create a more interactive and entertaining experience, and they use visuals to complement the message that you're trying to send or the brand of your organization or the story that you're trying to tell. So again, going to the Risen Church example, they're complementing their brand as a local LA-based church by showing familiar footage of the actual city, so that users, when they're going onto the site, they feel at home. They feel that message of, we are LA. This is a local organization. So it complements their brand in that way. And that's one of the great benefits of using creative backgrounds. And that's a way to also, of course, get it to resonate with your audience. And so we have some resources here. Stock footage for free is a great way to get small loops to create your own cinemagraphs, as I mentioned earlier. And as well, if you're up to it, you can use Adobe Photoshop and go through quick tutorials as we've listed here to create your own cinemagraph. So design trend number 4 is ditching the stock photo. Now, a stock photo is an image purchased by an organization for use in their publications or web pages. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about ditching the stock, we're focusing specifically on those traditional stock photos, quote unquote. So these are stock photos, as an example here. They're very professional, very well lit, blatantly staged. Everyone's looking way too happy and way too good, pearly white teeth. I mean, they're very, it's very obvious. There was a time when they were used in the past where people weren't so familiar with the idea of stock photos and they were more authentic. But now people are starting to catch on. Users and supporters and donors are starting to catch on, and stock photos are becoming obsolete because of their insincerity, because they come off as fake, and it's actually disconcerting and creates disconnect with your audience. So what the trend is, more and more, we're seeing that supporters are less concerned with that photo quality, and they're more concerned with whether your photos actually convey a real story. So instead of getting a professional stock photo, get a lesser quality photo, something maybe even from your cell phone camera, because the technology there is quite impressive and it's only getting better and better. So take those personalized photos and use that in your web pages. So if we look here at the Southern Illinois Heartland Support Group, I mean, they have this stock image here, and it works. It looks good, but what we're talking about is taking an actual photo of the group, of the participants perhaps, or of the attendees, or rather the facilitators. So some sort of photo that's in the actual space, and the reason for that is it will bring the user, when they see that, it'll give them another impression or another sense of what goes on in these support groups. And that's a way to connect with your audience and bring them, and it just engages them more, and it increases your likelihood of them coming out, increases your likelihood of them donating or engaging with your organization and your cause. Now, we do recognize, all this being said, that not all nonprofits can produce compelling photos. So in this case, we suggest using professional stock photos in the public domain. And these are photos that are professionally done, professionally framed, and they maintain a sense of artistry and meaning rather than just being staged. And you can take these photos and adapt them to complement your content as best as you can. So we have great resources listed here at pexels.com, unsplash.com, and Startup Stock Photos. So design trend number 5, we're looking at big and bold typography. Now this is an important one. First, typography is the art and technique of arranging typefaces to make text more appealing. So when we say the word typeface, that's a synonym for font. So arranging fonts to make text more appealing, that's the art of typography. And nonprofits are more and more embracing the importance of incorporating creative typography in their design and using fonts other than the defaults we're so familiar with, like Helvetica, Times New Roman, Arial, these kind of fonts. And really what it's about is being intentional. That's the key word, being intentional with the fonts that you use to complement the message you're trying to send. In this example, if you look at who's at your table, so we see this aerial image of a really, really fancy table set up with delicious, what looks like delicious food, clean water, and the serif font is actually quite elegant in itself. You see the line extending out from the R. So the elegance of the font is actually complementing the impression you're getting from the image. And then the secondary font, honor your loved ones with a donation of clean water, is much more a straight font, and that helps bring that secondary messaging into the background, right? So you can see the intentionality, and the font is playing with the image to create this message of, look how much we have, look at the privilege and the resources that we have to lead a healthy life. Why not give back to those who don't have it? And it's a powerful message. It's a really well-designed ad, and the typography plays a key role, especially when we're talking about flat design and flat 2.0, where often the design is so minimalist and simple that the font becomes almost the focus of the design. So keep that in mind as well, that it really plays a role in how your users are interacting and engaging with your websites. The other thing that we're looking at is that besides these default fonts, more and more we're seeing original fonts being developed. And these fonts are being hosted online for free. You can download them and install them for internal use, or because they're hosted online, you can use them for free very simply on your own websites. And just because the designers have access to different kinds of fonts, it's basically just creating more options for designers to use and to be intentional in the typography that they engage with. So in other words, simply because they have more options, there's more possibility for them to be creative with their typography. And that's something you can do as well at your nonprofit organization. So great resources for that, Font Squirrel and Google Fonts. There are tons and tons of options there. And we actually have a bonus trend. And let me say a quick word is that this is a trend for the techie nonprofit. So if you've been going through this webinar presentation and thinking, yeah, we do that as well, we're really up to date on these trends, this is something that you might want to consider. So touch-supported web features are really just touchscreen gestures that trigger an event. So in this instance, the gesture is pulling down on your screen and then tilting the screen to select an option. And the event that it's triggering is sharing an article. So the key benefits to this is it provides an interactive way for users to navigate your mobile site that doesn't involve clicking. Again, it's great for mobile, and because so many users are on mobile, it reflects positively on your organization. So, ideally, a nonprofit could have a mobile page, web page that tells an impact story about your nonprofit and something that you've done and how you've affected a community. And then there could be an option at the end to pull down to donate. So this is one way to envision using touch-supported web features that would engage supporters and donors and increase conversions. It's relatively new technology as well. So it's a way to make your nonprofit stand out from the crowd. And this is something, just having that kind of technological know-how always reflects positively on your nonprofit, shows that you're up to date and trying to get as close as you can to the cutting edge. And now you might be thinking, okay, this is a great feature. How the heck do I code this? Well, I can't tell you, but there are free open source codes that will do just that that support touch-supported web features. We're looking at websites like PhotoSwipe and DragEnd, and their developers have produced these coding that for you to use for free to create these touch-supported web features. Now, it does take talent to implement, but for a nonprofit that has their own IT support, it can be done with little cost. So it is survey time. Which of these web design trends do you think will impact your nonprofit the most? We're launching it right now, so get your answers in, and we'll share the results as soon as we have good participation. Beautiful. I'm seeing ditching the stock photo being the #1 popping out, which is a very important one, and one that's actually quite simple to implement. It's something that you can do today, right after you sign off with us. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to pass control now over to Joyce to facilitate the Q&A period.
All right, thanks, Matt. I hope everyone enjoyed the web design trends that we predict will play a large role in 2016. So now we do want to take the next 10 minutes to kind of answer any questions that you may have. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the question box. The first question that we have is actually from the slides about tech trends, and even though it was answered on the back end, we do want to address this because it does apply to many nonprofits. The question was, is Google Cloud considered a private or public cloud? And this is a great question because it's not just Google, it's also Microsoft Office 365. It could be QuickBooks Online. These are actually considered public cloud, even though their servers, like Microsoft servers, Google servers, Intuit servers, they're all very well protected, very secure. But when we talk about private cloud, we mean where are these data centers? Where are these servers actually being hosted? So for example, Google, Microsoft, and Intuit, their data servers are actually worldwide. Most of them are in the US, some of them are in Canada, some of them are in the UK. While they are very secure, they have state-of-the-art encryption. If you do have grants, let's say from British Columbia or Nova Scotia, and again, this doesn't apply to every nonprofit in Canada, but we do want to call out that some nonprofits may have the stipulation where they do need to ensure that the server is on Canadian soil. That's why we say that doesn't mean that you can't participate in cloud computing. You can, but just not with your sensitive information. And in those cases, you can still host them internally on internal cloud servers that you control. So instead of going to Google to host, let's say, your financial information, you can host that internally on your own server, but still have the cloud benefits by using something like OwnCloud, which again is an open source cloud server that you control. So I hope that answers your question. The second question is actually around the web design trend, and I will answer this question as well because it's very relevant, especially for Ontario nonprofits. The question was, are the fonts on the slides that were example of typography, big and bold typography, are those fonts AODA compliant, which is the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act? So I will be the first to say that we're not experts in AODA, but there are fonts that are actually compliant with AODA. The trend is not saying that you need to use the fonts presented on the slides per se, but that you can use fonts outside of the fonts that come with your computer. There are free fonts that you can download, install, and host online. And if you are looking for fonts that are compliant with accessibility acts, there are fonts that are available for you. One of the examples is this font called Dyslexie, which is actually created for people with dyslexia. So there are many options for you as designers, as nonprofit professionals. You're not limited to just Arial, Helvetica, Calibri, just the things that come basic with your computer. And again, many of these fonts are open source and free, so you can use and distribute freely. So we have about 7 more minutes, and we're just going to see if we could answer a few more questions. Actually, an easy one was, how many people were on this webinar? We actually hit close to 190 people at one point. So thank you again all for taking your lunch hour to join us for this webinar. And then very quickly, one of the questions is, what is the best integrated system of CRM plus social media plus email marketing for nonprofits? So here I'm going to say this is my personal recommendation. It really depends on your needs. One of the tech trends that we said is to have more and more your systems integrated with one another. There are software out there that is, like for an example, Salesforce, which is prime for integration. But again, Salesforce is cloud-based. So if your nonprofit does have that stipulation that you can't host things on the host sensitive information on the cloud, then you will have to look into other tools that will allow you to do that, but still be able to integrate with other platforms. So there are this idea of having all your platforms integrating natively. So when I say natively, it means your CRM and your email marketing can talk to one another just by themselves. So we can say Salesforce and MailChimp, they talk to one another natively. But there are actually tools out there that can help you connect platforms that normally will not connect, and they will become that joint, that middle person to automate that process. So one of the most well-known is Zapier, and I'll type in the URL into chat. This is a service that is solely built to connect other platforms to one another. So they can, for example, integrate GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar with Salesforce. So while it is recommended that you pick programs that can natively integrate with one another, if they don't, that doesn't mean that you're kind of out of luck. There are other software, other tools out there that can help you do that. So I do recommend looking to Zapier. They do have a free option, so you can kind of connect and see if this is suitable for your needs. And if it is, then you can upgrade to the paid plan where you can connect more and more platforms together. So very quickly, my base answer is, if you are not restricted to cloud, to tools outside of the cloud, I do recommend looking into kind of that Salesforce, MailChimp integration. And again, this doesn't mean that they will be the best for everything, but it is quite well suited for each other. So I hope that answers your question. So I will pick the next question, which is, let's see. So we do find that there's a lot of questions about the resources that we have listed and whether this webinar or slides will be available. They will be. All the links, all the resources that we mentioned will actually be captured in a web blog post, which is actually online on our website right now. So if you're looking for those links and those resources, you can pop online to see that. I would say the next question is, will there be more webinars like this one? We do want to deliver monthly webinars hosted by TechSoup Canada on various topics. We do recommend that that you tell us what you would like to learn about, so then we can prepare speakers for it. Right now, I can say that our next webinar will be in February. It's on nonprofit blogs and how you can make that work. But we do have a post-webinar survey that we do ask that you fill out, so then we can continue to populate our webinar services that will be helpful for your nonprofit. Kind of similar to the Google question, is Dropbox a private cloud? Unfortunately, Dropbox isn't. Again, that doesn't mean that they're not compliant with certain laws, but in terms of that specific law of hosting data in Canada, they will not be compliant. We do have another solution that is similar to Dropbox, that is called Box, and that is actually a quite robust cloud sharing tool. And they do have a policy where they do want to strive for global compliance. And I know this is sort of like a wide and vague call to action, but what it entails is that if you have certain privacy and data needs, you can contact them directly, tell them what your needs are, and they will try their best to be compliant for you. And again, I can't promise that they can, but they at least have that stipulation there where they recognize that privacy compliance is not just in the States, it's all over the world. So that is something that we do recommend. And again, the box offerings through TechSoup Canada is at a significant discount, and it is a perpetual license. So the one-time fee is it's quite substantial for a nonprofit. It's about like 113, I believe. But again, that is a one-time fee, and then you have box for life. So unlike Dropbox, where you have to do a monthly subscription for a business plan, you can actually get box and then use it forever. Even if you decide not to use it, it's still yours. So we do recommend that option. And the next question is WordPress, Joomla, or Drupal? Which would you suggest balancing flexibility and ease? This is a great question, and again, this is just a generic answer. You have to really assess your own internal needs, but we usually recommend nonprofits, if they don't have internal developers, if they don't have internal staff, to go with WordPress, mainly because the interface is a lot more flexible, and it helps you do more with the program without learning code. Drupal is very comprehensive. The way that we see it is like WordPress can help you make great websites and great CRMs and programs, but with Drupal you can actually make WordPress, which means like the capabilities of Drupal is immense, but then you do need to be a little bit tech savvy to use that content management system. We actually have a blog called CMS Crash Course. So if you go on our website and look for that, we have comparisons not just about WordPress, Joomla, or Drupal, but also Expression Engine and other one-time kind of content management systems. So it is one, I want to wrap it up here. If we didn't get to your question, we will do our best to follow up with you. But again, we want to do that with your permission because we want to be CASL compliant, which is Canadian anti-spam legislation. So after this webinar, there will be a survey that pops up. If you want us to follow up with you, especially if you had a question that we didn't answer, please indicate so then we can follow up with you over email. Instead of assuming that every question that hasn't been answered, you want us to follow up with you directly. So again, thank you for taking your lunch hour to join us. We really want to say that your time is precious, and we appreciate you taking that hour to just learn more about tech trends and web design trends for your nonprofit. Again, slides and the webinar recording will be available afterwards on our website, and a link will be sent to you once the resources are online. So without any other delays, I want to thank you again. Have a great rest of your day. Okay, bye.